friends. So this video is a little bit about how you've actually been using the benefits of completing the square for a while now when you do quadratics or when you solve quadratic equations. Because completing the square is the method by which we derive the quadratic formula. Uh, Many people's preferred methods, although the method behind it or the tool to get there, and therefore arguably the more powerful method, is completing the square itself. So let's take a look at our standard form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And let's see how completing the square can allow us to derive the quadratic formula that you probably have sung about in many instances. So notice here that we have a coefficient in front of the x squared term, in front of the quadratic term. So we want to divide away that leading coefficient. So we're going to divide everything on both sides by a. And it's a coefficient here, right? It's a number, not a variable. So I can do that with ease of mind on this right-hand side here. So now I've got x squared plus b over ax plus c over a is equal to 0. Again, a wasn't a variable, it was a number. So it just divides to 0. Okay, so now I want to figure out what b over 2 is, or in this case, what this linear coefficient is when divided by 2. So if I divide b over a by 2, or multiply it by a half, might be an easier way to think about it, I just get b over 2a. Okay, so that's my that's half of my linear term. And then I need to square that to find out what I wish my constant were to get my completed square. So I'm going to take b over 2a, I'm going to square it, and so that's b squared over 4a squared. Okay, so I'm going to use these terms to complete the square. So first let's just move this c over a to the other side to clear up some space here. So I get x squared plus b over ax is equal to negative c over a. And then completing the square is going to give me, I want to add this b squared plus 4a squared to make a completed square, and whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side, so I add it over here. Okay. And so now this is a perfect square trinomial, which I can write as x, in this case, plus half of the linear term, so b over 2a, and that is equal to what I've got here. I'm going to just do a little bit of work to get a common denominator so I can combine these terms. So here I have a denominator of 4a squared, so I want a denominator of 4a squared. So I'm going to multiply this by another 4a, top and bottom. And so that gives me negative 4ac over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit more before I go on to the next step. I'm going to notice they're both over 4a squared, so I'm going to rewrite that as negative 4ac plus b squared over 4a squared, which is equal to x plus b over 2a, the quantity squared. So if I take the square root of both sides, I get x plus b over 2a equal to the square root of this side, which might be starting to look a little bit familiar to some of you. So it's plus or minus, right? Positive or negative from this side. The square root on the top, I can't take a perfect square of that, so I'll just rearrange it here. B squared minus 4ac, and that's divided by the square root of 4a squared, which is 2a. So again, starting to look a little bit familiar. So I just need a little bit more room here. So if I subtract b over 2a from both sides, b over 2a, I'm going to get x is equal to negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, which is also over 2a, which means that these fractions have a common denominator. And so some of you might recognize x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that, my friends, is your quadratic formula derived through the method of completing the square. So the much more powerful tool is the tool that allows us mathematically to get this rule that many of you have memorized, even though it's quite a sort of convoluted little piece of mathematics. So I would argue that probably in the long run it's much wiser to become really comfortable with the method, the algebra, to get you there. I hope that was illuminating for all of you, and thank you very much. I look forward to more math tomorrow.